Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Your mileage may vary, but most of the groups that I play role-playing games with have a humorous bent to them. When we get together and it's just a social time, humor is a part of that. I find funny things that have happened to us, along with describing some of the trials and tribulations that we have been having, maybe this year more than others. Our progress is, how our kids are doing in some cases. But most of the people I know have a sense of humor somewhere in the ballpark of mine, and you joke about things. You find things that are a little funny uh, because laughter is community building. We bind over laughter. Yeah. We bind over tragedy, and then we bind over the laughter that helps us move past it. In many of these cases, that humor follows us into the game. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I like me a little humor in my RPG. It can both lighten the load and it can set in counterpoint the parts that are very tense or disturbing or in some way build on that tension that you need to build drama so that you get your endorphins for overcoming the thing that made you tense. But the humor both helps you get to that point by stretching out your capacity for tension and helps to break that tension when things have happened or could happen in a humorous way. Groups will find their humor in these situations. The bad guy gets taken out in a humorous way. There's a joke or a quip that you've got to do. Go all 80s and do the post-kill puns from Rambo or James Bond movies, particularly the Roger Moore ones. Just a little something, a little funny thing. Some players build their characters for humorous potential. You build a character so that it's going to be able to do certain things. And that can be drama or tension or pathos or humor. Sometimes a number of these things. I've optimized characters for humorous potential. No matter how grim or gritty or dark, someone is going to bring that little light, like a flashlight on a camping trip, because if everything is constantly dark, get lost. You get lost in that mood and that atmosphere. If there is no light to provide contrast, you have nothing but darkness and you get lost. It can't all be humorous and light unless you're playing tune, in which case, sure, go for it. But uh, adding the humor as an accent, as an element. And it's not even something that you necessarily have to plan for or script for. It doesn't have to be something that's in your written adventure or that you've got a note for, insert joke here. It'll just happen. The best kinds of humor to come in during a role playing game session is the spontaneous stuff, that joke that occurs to you as you're going on, a running gag that you can make over and over again based on some character or location, or a pun that you've been building up that sounds like something. Let them say it 3 or 4 more times and I'll have something. That's kind of a triumph of the will. Puns are pretty terrible for the most part, but when you pull one off. So humor has its place in role-playing games. Absolutely does. Whether the game is humorous or not, it has its place. There are times when it might not be 100% appropriate, but if someone needs to relieve their tension, uh, and does it with a fairly funny joke, that's XP for me. So, the thesis of this particular episode is partially to do with humor, but uh, there are some fairly universally funny things. Things that, in the right application, at the right time, and with the right amount of taste and decorum, uh, can add to just about any situation. And if it seems like I'm beating around the bush, poop is funny. I'm sorry, poop is funny. We get to the part where we can kind of understand language. Before we can understand language, belches and farts are funny. The sounds that our body naturally makes when we're expelling gas, for some reason, that triggers an endorphin rush and we laugh. And it starts at about the age of 3 to 6 months, and it goes until someone tell me when it stops because it's still funny to me. Uh, I had a kid and raised a son, and we bonded often over how funny burps and farts can be, and by extension, poop can also be funny. It's a fairly disgusting topic to introduce into these things. And if you've got no poop in your role-playing games, you're doing fine. There is nothing wrong with not having poop in your role-playing games, but poop happens. The more creative your style of play is, the more open your world, the more sandboxy it is, the more opportunities you give for people to find things to work with. You know, you've got a limited set of tools, and you've got only so much equipment, and you've got to fight this thing. And well, what are you going to see if you can put together? Because this could be a problem. You need to get some stuff, and someone somewhere. Can I get a laxative? That's often how it starts. In my games, I have found, and games I have played with other people, whether I'm running or playing, if a laxative is introduced in the first act, it's going to be fired by the end of the third. Chekhov's laxative, as it were. Um, and the number of ways in which poop factors in is just enormous, particularly with my style of running consequences. I sit back and try to consider the consequences of actions taken by the party. Whether they are written in the adventure or not, I have a picture of that world in my head, and I have to work out how the world reacts to certain events and things. So I'm playtesting the victory system back when it was War for the Shattered Earth. It was all a fantasy game, but I was before I expanded it out to be a multi-genre system. And the group of kids in Burbank are just amazing playtesters for this thing. Game wouldn't be what it is without it. There was a banshee in the party, a male banshee, who had a sonic attack, a screaming ability, as it were. And there was a problem in the sewers. It's a fantasy city, but it's a large fantasy city. It actually has a developed sewer system, um, kind of like the Roman sewer system, which was really advanced about the height of the empire. And what did they do first? Did they explore a section of the sewer to see what the construction was like and what kind of mapping they might have? No, they didn't. Would cast a spell and scry the sewers? No. They decided they were going to have the Banshee scream into a sewer opening. Okay, all right. It's got a limited range and a limited reach. It's only going to have so much distance it's going to hit and so much effect. Oh, can we get a megaphone? Can you get yeah, we're just going to roll up a piece of metal, and so it's got a small opening on one and a big opening on the other, just big. And put it over the sewer opening. It's going to scream into that. And yeah, that is pretty much exactly what they did. So they sent a an amplified, supernaturally powerful sonic wave through a closed uh, opening, a sealed uh, into this system. And he rolled really, really well to use his ability. But what did they think was going to happen? Every other opening to the sewers, just exploded. Just poop everywhere. Came out the openings and rained back down on the city. The ones who are fortunate enough to have those openings outside, there are openings into people's homes and businesses, and all of this just flume, the entire contents of the sewer liquefied and thrown out with considerable force. So the sewers have all been emptied out and are all over everything. There is going to be disease and pestilence in this city, unlike anything that it has ever faced before. But the sewers were pretty darn clear when they went down to kill the monster, which had survived, which was the problem. Uh, there were workers in the sewers who did not fare as well, and some folks who were living in culverts down there that were relatively clean and safe until someone screamed through a megaphone into the sewer. But they had to deal with the fact that now there is an entire city covered in poop, looking at them like, hey, there's the people who covered us all in poop. Oh, the rest of the party was not unscathed. I mean, it was just showering down. They didn't have much choice but to let it rain on them while they tried to figure out what to do next. And going down into the sewer turned out to be the cleanest, most expeditious escape. It was horrible. It was a terrible thing to do to the city. And we laughed for like half an hour. Poop is funny. Poop is, uh, you know, bodily functions at a certain level form this a bottom level of humor, but it's a solid bottom level. It carries. Um, and sometimes you might have grand designs for your game, and those grand designs go away because, well, poop. Um, everybody poops. Well, most creatures poop, and if you're dealing with creatures who poop, that is exploitable. Um, you know, buildings have sewer systems. If you have living workers in your building, whether it is a fantasy castle or it is a giant corporation, there is a portion of its structure that is devoted to the plumbing necessary to get poop out. And that is exploitable. People got to eat. And people and creatures and animals having eaten eventually need to poop. And these natural cycles are exploitable if you are thinking tactically and you're looking for, well, I can't think of any other way in here. Can we sneak in with the food? You find the way the food is going in, or you find the way the poop is coming out. And one of those two ways is your way in. They're usually gardened the way the food goes in. The place the poop comes out, not quite as often. We tend to shy away from these things as Individuals in society, well, I don't want to go where the poop is because poop is objectionable. I don't want to be around that. I do not want to deal with the smell or the sight of it. It's something I have an aversion to. I want this as far away from me as possible. I wouldn't deal with that. So a character who can just wade into it and deal with it has an advantage. They can go where other people would really rather not. Not only where people would rather not be, but where they would rather not even look or pay attention to. Uh, Certain elements of society just prefer not to even think of the fact that there is some place their poop goes. It's just gone. And because it is exploitable, intelligent gamers will think to use it more often than not. They got to eat. What do we put in their food? And because it's happening in a group of people who are already predisposed towards laughing with each other, poop jokes. They'll happen. If you would like to not have that element present at your table, that's completely understandable. Like I said, it's objectionable. It's conceptually objectionable. It's one of the things we are hardwired to find objectionable. But at the same time, that deep-seated reaction is the same reason that we're also hardwired to find it just a little bit funny when it's used incorrectly. Double-edged sword poop is. You can discourage it at your table. There is no reason not to. If you see things heading in that direction, can I find a laxative? No, you can't. We're not going to go there. Thanks. Look for something else. Can I find a diuretic? Move along, please. Occasionally poop jokes might sneak out. The little ones, sure. If it starts to be patterns, like, could we not? Could we please just not? Just this once? Could we just not go to poop? Can we just, please? It's a fair request, and most groups would be good with that. Uh, the good thing about a group that will go to that kind of humor is that they're often also the kinds of groups who will understand if they've pushed it a little bit too far. As a game master, it is hard to push me to the point where the poop has gone too far. I have ended bad guys with poop as a player. I have seen the same thing happen to my bad guys as a game master, and it's funny every time because it's never the same way twice. It's one of those things that the more creative use you can find for it, maybe the more experience I will give you, because I haven't seen that one before. Seen 1,000,002 ways people have used poop in games. If you show me 1,000,003, I might just give you extra XP. In general, humor at the role playing table uh, can go places some folks might find objectionable, where if it was in another context, you might find objectionable. You don't want to have these conversations at family dinner. Don't want to have these conversations at Sunday school or out loud in the student union. Occasionally, you don't want to have them in a Fuddruckers, and I probably should have kept my voice down that one time. There are all kinds of different objectionable humors that are going to pop up. You're comfortable with your friends. There are things that you can joke about. You've been killing people right and left in game. A couple of jokes about death and or mortality probably going to sneak in there. Nothing wrong with that. The only limits on the humor at the table, poop, death, or otherwise, is the sensibilities of the people there. Hopefully, your group has a grasp on what humor will and won't fly. And sometimes these games are how you find these limits. Someone gets a little squicked or tweaked, and you get that bit of discomfort. And while you want people tense at your table, and you want people to experience a little bit of the tension that their character is, because that builds the drama, which helps you build to a good payoff. You don't want people uncomfortable. You don't want people feeling like this space isn't someplace that they can be comfortable. It's the comfort of the gaming table that makes it possible for us to experiment and play and take risks there, because that's a place where we are comfortable. Can I address something in a character I might have a hard time with? Well, if I'm comfortable there, yes. Can we address topics or events that I am uncomfortable with at that table, that I might have problems with? If I'm comfortable at the table, yeah. If we're all comfortable at the table, then we can do some pretty amazing things. We can set aside a lot of limitations. We can set aside some of our better judgment from time to time and take chances that we normally wouldn't. We can scream yippee-ki-yay while we're jumping off the top of a building because we're comfortable in that place where we can take that risk. If we sacrifice that comfort so that someone can make a joke that makes someone else uncomfortable, then we are losing what has made this place, our gaming table, a good place to game. So there is a balance and there is a limit, and I can't tell you what it is. I cannot tell you how far the humor should go or how far it shouldn't. That is entirely based on your table, on the game master and the players, on the people that are sitting in those chairs or on those couches, or, oh God, one of these days I want a game in a swimming pool. Um, those people, your people, are going to determine what humor will work. Poop usually works. It's pretty basic. It's pretty solid, so to speak. Um, Not always, usually. And it's okay to experiment a little in that space. Most of this is going to happen organically. It's just going to come out as you game, especially if it's getting free form, it's getting tense, you're looking for any opportunity or any advantage or anything you could exploit to get some advantage over the bad guy who's been riding roughshod over the party this entire time. And yeah, it's like, well, what about a laxative? It happens more often than not. Playing a mage game, my friend Vic ran a game where we were all playing agents of the technocracy, the dark corporate influence that is trying to take magic away from the world and drive it into a technological supremacy. And my character was a progenitor. Uh, those who focus on life sciences and the life magic, as it were, um, as the traditionalists would put it. And we had to break into a facility. So I had 3 dots in life, which meant I could affect organs and organisms and have some control over individual organic systems. And we were facing guys in sealed armor who were gunning us down, and we were not going to last. And I improvised a route that I ended up calling Foaming Pipe Snake. where I caused a peristaltic shift and peristaltic spasm throughout his entire one of their digestive tracts. It was so as if I had sealed the bottom of it with a tight grasp, grabbed it just above that, and pulled upwards and fired everything in his digestive tract out his mouth at force, busted the seals on his suit, drowned the guy. It was horrible. And we laughed for half an hour. And foaming pipe snake became a rote that more than one of us used from time to time. And it's still kind of funny. It's horrible. It's a terrible thing to contemplate. It's a miserable way for someone to die. But I don't care who you are. That's funny, yo. When you get into it and the creativity starts flowing and everyone is throwing around ideas right and left, and something's going to come out. And it's either going to fly and it might not. The game master has a certain amount of responsibility because they are kind of the de facto administrator of the table as a comfortable space. I mean, if it's going to fly, is it going to fly? It flies. If you see a little discomfort there, you might want to caution it. And if you see someone who just cannot deal with it, as happens. Like, okay, that's kind of funny, but we're not going there. We are not going to go there. Try and think of something else. And enforce that. And no, we're not going there. Say it as seriously as you have to. And if you've got people who do not understand that that is a hard limit and they can't go past it, then that's a discussion to be had with them outside of the game. Because you need to be able to put a limit on things from time to time. But again, I can't tell you where that line is. Humor is good. Humor in games is awesome. Humor in games often involves poop, and how far the poop goes in the game humor is entirely based on what your group can deal with as individuals and as a group. Don't think I can bullet point it any harder than that. It just keeps happening. If it was a group, that'd be one thing. But it happens, and maybe it's me. It's every group I have been in. Although many of them have previous history where they have demonstrated that no, there was poop before I got there. Maybe it's the groups that I'm gravitated to. I couldn't tell you. Now years of con games, and I can just over and over 4 hours at a time with hundreds of different people over years, and yeah, poop happens. Well, that is my ramblings on humor and poop in games. Thank you very much for following along. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you have other things you'd like to hear me talk about, other subjects you'd like to hear me cover, feel free, leave me a comment below. I will love getting your comment. You will love leaving me one. If you would like to see these videos when they come out, follow along. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you do, make sure you hit the little notification bell next to it so that you're alerted when my videos become available. If you would like to help the channel in a more substantial fashion, I invite you to hit me up my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps. Allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me, and I'll see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.